Welcome to Forum 360 on Fusion, your PBS channel and your Rubber City radio stations. This is Leslie Ungar, your host today. Thank you for joining us on our global outlook with a local view. What if you could save a life? Would you? Could you? Magan David Adom saves lives. It's an Israeli story. It's a human story. It could be your story. It's a story about people saving lives, some literally saving lives and others supporting those who do save lives. It's the story of Israeli EMTs and paramedics who devote their lives to saving lives. And it's the story of Americans who feel the urgency of Israeli ambulance sirens from across the globe and join Magan David rescue efforts with their generous support. Magan David Adom is Israel's ambulance, blood services, and disaster relief organization. It serves as the emergency medical first responders for the country's more than 8.5 million people of all religions. Magan David Adom is the only organization mandated by the Israeli government to serve in the role of first responder. Interestingly, it is not a government agency. It saves lives, 1, 2, and 3 lives at a time through the financial gifts it receives. Our two guests today represent one of the American chapters that support Magan David in Israel. From the David Mark Berger chapter located in Cleveland, we welcome our guests today. We first welcome Barry Feldman, has been a passionate advocate of Israel and its people since his first visit to Israel in 1967. He sits on the National Board of American Friends of Magan David Adom. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Diana Greenberg, a product of Northeast Ohio. She uses her background in telecommunications and public relations to bring awareness and grow recognition of the good work they do to the Midwest and throughout the country. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start with Israel before we go to your specific organization. You both have been to Israel. Many viewers and listeners to our show only know what they see and hear on the nightly news. Barry, you have watched Israel evolve from 1967 to your most recent trip in 2016. What do you think would surprise people most about Israel today?
My first trip there, I was very young, and I went there after probably subsequently every 2-3 years. I think you'd find it amazing to see a nation that began in 1948 and is such an industrial nation, such a bright nation, such a high-tech nation with places like Google and Motorola and Teva Pharmaceutical there. You've taken land that's been barren with desert, and it's green and it's beautiful, and it could grow vegetation throughout the whole country. Doesn't matter if it's in Beersheba or Eilat or Rehovot. The country and the people are amazing in the passion that they have for growth, for intellect, for schooling. Probably some of the highest medical technology has evolved from the state of Israel. We don't think of it, but when we work with Waze and when we have
love Waze.
When we have the computer little things, it's all come from technology from Israel. I think you'd be amazed when you go into a place like Tel Aviv, and it's like New York. It's 24/7 with cafes and with restaurants and people going beaches. And when you see all these things that are happening to the people and the wars and the bombs coming over, these people have a passion for life and living. That's what I see of my Israel.
Now, you first were there 20 years after it was founded as a country, and now you visited as Startup Nation. So, you know, can you think of any specific differences that you've noticed in those years?
Well, actually, I was there originally in 1968, and it was exactly a year after the 1967 war. As I go there now, I see cities that have evolved. I see gardens that have evolved. I've seen businesses that have evolved. each time I go there every year, it becomes a more major transition of a country growing and evolving at such a rapid pace. It's amazing to see how it's growing and evolving and doing, and the building and the infrastructure and the water. The water technology is the keenest in all of the world. They have the cleanest water. They reuse their water. They recycle their water. It's amazing, a country that began in 1948 and where they are today.
And Diana, you have been to Israel. What would someone who has never been there, do you think, like to know about Israel?
It's everybody's homeland. I think a lot of people associate Israel with Judaism, but it's Bethlehem. It is everyone's homeland. It's also the best dairy I've ever had, the best produce I've ever had, the most beautiful people. Everyone is so happy and everyone belongs. When you go there, you just feel like I was meant to come here. I was meant to walk the streets, and I was meant to come here for a reason. And it's very, very safe.
Yes, it is.
Now, as Barry has been going to Israel every 3-4 years since '68, I have been 3 times, and I went every 17 years. So
you can see the difference.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just absolutely fascinating to see how much cities grew, how much they changed, and just it's overwhelming in such a beautiful manner.
And isn't it amazing that you feel safer there than you do if you're home in your hometown or
absolutely.
New York or California? When you're there, you feel safe. Watching it on the news, you may get a different story, but when you're there, don't you feel safe?
Very safe.
Your name is Friends of Magen David Adom. So tell a viewer that may not know what that means. What does it mean first? And then we'll look at what your purpose is. But first, let's look at the name. So to someone that doesn't know, Magen David Adom means what?
American Friends of Magen David Adom was a friends group that began in the 30s. Originally, we had much equipment being sent from Europe to Israel with regard to medical equipment and ambulances and such. And in the late 30s, when there was Nazi Germany coming around, the borders were closed. So consequently, the people from Europe were unable to send equipment to Israel. And this is how American Friends of Magen David Adom began. We began sending ambulances and equipment and supplies to Israel during the late 30s and the early 40s. We are the strongest, the largest friends group that still exists today, and we are probably one of 17, 18 friends groups throughout the world that support Magen David Adom with their passion of ambulances and services.
So let's look at the name, Magen David Adom.
Right.
What does that mean? Before we get to the friends part, what does the name mean?
So just as the American Red Cross, with whom we are affiliated, Magen David Adom is Israel's Red Star.
So Israel's Red Star would be like our
like the American Red Cross, the National 911. So just as we have 911, in Israel it's 101.
So if I was in Israel and needed to call for emergency, I would call 101, and I would get medics and an ambulance that in some way was supported by friends in America that have supported this organization.
Correct.
We have more than 120 stations throughout Israel. And again, yes, so the American Friends are the generous, wonderful people, the donors who donate to fund all of the stations.
So as the first responder, what does that mean on a daily basis? So I would call for my mother fell down the steps, or there was a terrorist bomb in a bus. When am I calling, and what is going to happen after I call?
That's a very good question. So it could be a baby being born. It could be a terrorist attack. It could be a heart attack. And what happens is you call 101 anywhere in the country, and or you can text to anywhere in the country, which is very sophisticated technology, and which we do not have in the United States
So if
today.
I text to 101 or something, someone will come?
Someone will respond right away. They will assess the situation, see what is best to address the situation, being if it's a terrorist attack, who to send there, being if it's a heart attack, what to send there, what equipment and such, and then they will contact one of the 13,000 volunteers throughout Israel or one of the 2,000 staff professionals to assess the situation and to address that right away.
Okay, we're going to get to the volunteers in a moment, but I'm curious about something. So Magan David Adom is the only organization mandated by the Israeli government to serve in this role, but it's not a government agency. So does that mean that it does not get government funding?
It's government funded only through pay for services. It is not government subsidized directly. And being that it is an affiliate of the Red Cross since 2005, it cannot take government funds directly either.
So do you get any money from the Red Cross, or you just get it to be affiliated?
I believe we're still supported through the Red Cross also. I'm not certain how the funding works with it. But the other issue is when we are tied in with the Red Cross, not only do we have Red Cross assistance throughout the world, but we assist the Red Cross throughout the world when there's attacks and such.
So Israelis that are in the Magan David Adom in Israel could go to Chile or Peru or to Haiti and help?
We actually did. We were the first responders in Haiti, and we stayed there after many of the countries left Haiti to help them with their secondary problems. We left medical attention and doctors there, yes. And we did that in the tsunami also. So yes, we are the first responders. We believe in humanitarian help throughout the world, not just in Israel.
Today we are talking about Israel's designated first responders with Barry Feldman, National Board of American Friends of Magan David Adom, and Diana Greenberg, Development Executive for American Friends. Can I just say AFMDA?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
Please.
so much easier. Thank you so much. So you were just talking about volunteers. The organization is mainly staffed by volunteers and has over 10,000 people volunteering. What do all these volunteers do? If I call 101, am I getting a volunteer? Or what do all this is a lot of volunteers. What do they all do?
You just might when there's an emergency. So again, over 80% of the staff is comprised of volunteers. It's very important to people to volunteer their time. It's a call, it's a passion inside of them to work for Magan David Adom. So when there's an emergency, they will change outfits. They will stop their day as an attorney, as a teacher. They were whatever they do during the day, they just stop, put on that Magan David Adom uniform and go to the call of duty. And as will the employees. So whatever that situation is, Leslie, it could be both the full-time employee and the volunteers going together to the scene.
Why would you say, a lot of medical innovation, technology comes from Israel. Why are Israelis so good at trauma?
Because everyone in the country, it's such a small country, has been touched by trauma, either by a friend, either by a relative, either by a brother or sister. So they've been trained with trauma, they've seen trauma, they've seen bombs drop in their backyards, and this is how they've lived their lives. And this is also why they're so passionate about giving back to it and seeing that it doesn't happen. We had a young lady who was in Cleveland speaking about 6, 7 years ago, and her name was Shira, and she told a story in Jerusalem about her father and her sister that went the night before to a coffee shop in Jerusalem before her sister was married, and the coffee shop was bombed, and her sister and her father perished in this bombing attack. And because of that, she became a paramedic because she felt so helpless that she couldn't help her father and her sister. So this is why people are so passionate and take accountability and ownership to it.
Now, sometimes I think people, Americans, may not realize that medical invention or innovation in Israel helps Americans in Akron, in Cleveland, in Iowa, in the Army. How does this Israeli-American connection help here in America?
We have relationships with the universities, both in Jerusalem and in Cleveland even, to be exact, which are working on medical innovations together. So Israel has many partnerships in the U.S. and proudly in Cleveland right now that are working with the innovation processes. And it's been a very, very effective and a very respectable relationship for all of them. And they've gone to great heights and they've had great success with it.
You know, my dad, around 1990, my dad was one of the first in Akron to have a defibrillator, which was in Israel. It was invented by Israelis. So there was an example of a father in Akron getting, you know, the advantage and the benefit of Israeli technology. I have a question to ask that I don't know if it's politically correct or not, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Can you answer or explain, if God forbid there's a terrorist attack and there's an Arab casualty or Arab casualties and there's Jewish casualties or Christian casualties or Druze casualties, do the first responders make any distinction between casualties by religion?
Can I answer that question?
Absolutely.
We don't look at anyone's passport. We don't know their ethnicity. We don't know their religion. They don't know their race or their beliefs. Our paramedics are trained to help people. So they go to the people who need it first, who need it the most. It has nothing to do with Israel, Arab, Christian, or such. It's whatever's needed most, that's where they go to. It's also a very dangerous topic because one doesn't know if someone may be wearing a bomb, as they're coming into our hospitals or going to our ambulances, but we are taught from a humanitarian standpoint to treat the people who need it most first, and that's what's done.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you. Israel's National Ambulance, you explained about the role of first responders, but talk about the role of Magan David Adam in blood services and disaster relief. Like how, when they're not actually answering a 101 call, what kind of services are they providing to the people in the country?
Again, Magen David Adom, you can look at it as 3 pillars of what we do. We are the first responders. We are the blood services. So we are 100% of the blood for the Israeli Defense Force. And we are 97% of the blood of all of the hospitals. And right now we just broke ground on a state-of-the-art, cutting-edge, underground blood center, which is in Ramla, which is not too far from Tel Aviv. It's a wonderful location. And so here, since it's underground, it'll be protected, which is very important. And say, also, when you donate to American Friends of Magen David Adom, say you donate $100, that processes 3 bags of blood. So Barry and I have both been very fortunate when we have traveled to Israel. He donates every time he goes. He donates blood. And I happened to donate when I was there in June. I donated, by happenstance, I donated on National Blood Donor Day, which was very special. I did that with colleagues of mine. And so it is so important being the, as we serve, we provide all of the blood of Israel. Oh, and the third pillar of what Magen David Adom does is the training worldwide that we spoke of in Haiti during the tsunamis, providing that worldwide training that Magen David Adom does. But the blood services is just so essential, so important. So in addition to supplying the blood, we process the blood, we protect the blood. We are the blood center for Israel.
So you are literally the bloodline of Israel.
We are the one and only bloodline of Israel. And let me interject by saying with all that I've done for Israel and participated as a diaspora Jew, nothing has made me happier than to go there and to give blood and to know that I may be saving a life or helping someone who's in a tragedy. And I did this during Protective Edge in 2014 with the Gaza-Israel conflict when they needed blood most, and I did this just recently with my godchildren there to see how important that the blood is of the lifeline of our country. It's a great feeling. It's real because you're giving of yourself to the country, and it's really, as you see that bag fill up, you get a smile on your face because you know you're really doing something that has meaning and has merit, and it translates into a human life.
You know, your chapter, and I want to get this in before we have to close, your chapter is named after David Mark Berger. Clevelander, for anyone that does not remember, Clevelander, who was an Israeli Olympic weightlifter and one of the 11 Israeli Olympians that were killed by the Palestinian group Black September during the Munich massacre at the '72 Olympics, which I do remember watching on television. How does the chapter being named after him help keep his name alive?
It was originally started by a small group of people in Cleveland, and Dr. Berger, his father, was one of the founding members of it. We also just had a statue dedication at a race about 4 or 5 years ago with the David Mark Berger statue to show that his passing was not in vain but made a difference to the world. And this is what David Mark Berger would have wanted.
Now, a couple fun questions before we go. You know, we talk a lot about crisis when we talk about Israel, but we also sometimes kind of forget the fun part about visiting Israel and the food and the music and the festivities. So let me ask each of you your favorite city in Israel. Diana first. Your favorite city when you visited is where? They're so different. You've got Tel Aviv that is so ancient, and you've got I mean, Jerusalem is so ancient, Tel Aviv that's so current, but a favorite city that you like to visit or have visited?
My most recent trip, I really have found a new appreciation for Haifa.
Okay, on the water.
Right, it's beautiful. There was some destruction recently during firestorms, but Haifa is gorgeous.
And in a few words, one of your favorite cities?
I was recently in Beersheba, which is a desert city. And I found it very exciting because it's being built up into a very modern cosmopolitan city. And this was the vision of our forefathers of Israel originally, to live in the desert, not to live in Tel Aviv. I enjoy on Saturdays going to the beach in Tel Aviv and just seeing all the mayhem of people having fun.
So we cannot do a show about Israel without mentioning food. So let me ask each of you, when you think about Israel and a favorite food or a favorite eating memory, where might that take place? Actually, my first trip to Israel, it was Yemenite food that I was first introduced to in Jerusalem. So a favorite food or a favorite food memory?
Oh, bar none. The falafel in Jerusalem. Taking a quick break during some shopping after being in their market, and the falafel, the best I've ever had.
The falafel. And in a word or two, your favorite food?
I like their chicken schnitzel.
Okay, there you have it. What if you could save a life? Would you? Could you? Now you know about people around the world, as well as people in your neighborhoods, who help to save lives across the globe. We thank our guests today, Barry and Diana, for joining us to help tell a story that in some ways started here in Cleveland with David Mark Berger and now affects people, Jews, Arabs, Druze, Christians, every day in what we all refer to as the Holy Land. Magan David Adom saves lives. American Friends of Magan David Adom help them do their job every day, every night, and with every siren. For more information, you can go to afmda.org. I'm Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Akronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.